All right, so get this. Okay. What if I told you that there was like a manager crash coming?
Hmm.
And no, I don't mean the stock market. I'm
Okay.
talking about like workplaces
Yep.
just totally melting down.
Wow, that's pretty intense.
It is.
Yeah.
And it's actually based on
Okay.
a new report, and it comes from this group called Mequilibrium.
Oh, Mequilibrium. Yeah, I know those guys. They're interesting.
Yeah, so they're like a digital coaching platform, right?
Right.
They're like right in the trenches with businesses working on all this kind of workplace wellness stuff.
Yeah, yeah. They really have their finger on the pulse of what's going on.
Yeah.
The trends, the anxieties, the whole thing.
Exactly. So when they talk about a crash, we should probably listen, right?
Yeah.
So what are they actually saying?
Well, it's their prediction is actually pretty stark.
Okay.
They're basically saying that by 2025, burnout among middle managers is going to totally reach this tipping point.
Okay, hold on. Back up for a sec.
Sure.
Even if I'm like not a manager, why should I even care about this? This sounds like somebody else's problem.
Well, think of it this way. Middle managers, they're like the linchpins.
Okay.
They hold everything together.
Yeah.
They're the ones taking the big ideas from up top, from the executives,
Mhm.
and they're translating all that into reality
Yeah.
for their teams. They're the bridge.
So if they're like totally burnt out, the whole system's going to fall apart.
Exactly.
Okay, so their well-being or lack thereof impacts everyone.
Exactly. And here's the thing. This is a problem that's been building for a while. Mequilibrium actually points out that historically, middle managers, they've been kind of underserved when it comes to support compared to, other levels in a company.
So they're like getting squeezed from both ends. High expectations from above, the needs of their teams below.
Totally. And the data actually backs this up. Did you know that, unsupported middle managers, they're 4 times more likely to just up and quit. And they're twice as likely to report, having poor well-being.
4 times. That's a huge red flag.
It is. It is.
Are we actually seeing any real-world signs that all this burnout is reaching, like, a critical mass?
Oh, absolutely. So Glassdoor, they reported that manager confidence was, the lowest it's ever been in early 2023.
Mm.
And then later that year, a UKG report actually found that almost half of middle managers had actually thought about quitting.
Wow.
Because of stress.
So this isn't just like, some hypothetical anxiety we're talking about here. This is like real. People are like on the verge.
Yeah, for sure.
But why is this happening now? Is there something more to it than just the typical stress of the job?
Well, I think there's a few things, but one of the big ones is this constant pressure to perform.
Mm.
They're constantly being squeezed between demanding executives on one side
Yeah.
and then your team's needs on the other side.
Right.
It's this balancing act.
Yeah.
They got to keep everybody happy. They got to get results.
Right. And somehow stay sane through the whole process.
Sure.
Like they're juggling chainsaws blindfolded.
Yeah, it's intense. There's this great quote. It's from Pat Wadors. She's UKG's chief people officer. And she said, "We put so much pressure on the manager and we don't give them enough scaffolding."
Scaffolding, that's a really interesting word.
Yeah.
Like it implies this lack of support.
Right.
Like they're just left to figure things out on their own.
Exactly.
So what's missing? What kind of scaffolding do these managers need?
That's the million-dollar question, right? And it's definitely something we're going to dig into a lot deeper as we go through all this.
Okay.
But before we do that, there's another factor we got to think about.
Okay.
It's kind of adding fuel to the fire,
Okay.
and that's layoffs.
Right. All those job cuts.
Yeah.
Especially in tech, it's hard to imagine that didn't really pile on to the managers who survived all that.
Oh, absolutely. And we're not even just talking about the emotional toll of seeing their colleagues, lose their jobs.
Yeah.
It's also the added workload and the
Well,
pressure
Right.
on the ones that are left.
Right. Doing more with less.
Exactly.
And this wasn't just happening behind closed doors, right?
Yeah.
Remember when Mark Zuckerberg at Meta called it the year of efficiency?
Oh, yeah.
Their whole thing about flattening management levels, that sent shockwaves through the whole industry.
Oh, yeah. And that focus on efficiency, I mean, sure, it makes sense if you're just trying to save money,
Yeah.
but it kind of unintentionally contributes to this culture of fear, uncertainty for middle managers.
Yeah.
It just adds to that whole burnout thing.
Okay, so we've got increasing pressure,
Yeah.
lack of support, this feeling of uncertainty from all the layoffs.
Right.
So where does that leave us? Is there any light at the end of the tunnel here?
Well, I don't think it's all doom and gloom. It's not like they're destined to just crash and burn. There's a lot that can be done to like prevent this whole crash thing, you know?
Okay, so what can companies actually do? Like, what are the steps to prevent this meltdown? We've been talking about scaffolding,
Right.
but how do they actually build that, like, support structure?
Well, first off, I think they got to like ditch those generic leadership training programs.
Okay.
You know, the ones that everybody gets shuffled through. It's all like leadership 101, you know.
Right.
Middle managers, they need something way more targeted, something that actually addresses like the specific challenges they face every day.
So more than just leadership 101,
Right.
what, like, skills should companies be focusing on?
Think like communication skills, conflict resolution, delegation,
Right.
all the things that'll help them navigate those pressures from, you know, both sides above and below. And then, you know, leading through change.
Yeah.
That's huge.
Especially now, like, everything's changing so fast.
Right, exactly.
It's like constant. So you're basically saying companies need to, like, personalize their approach.
Yeah.
Recognize that this one-size-fits-all model just doesn't work.
Exactly, exactly. And it's got to go beyond those formal training programs too. It's got to be like a cultural thing
Okay.
where managers feel like they can actually, you know, speak up about their challenges
Yeah.
without being judged.
So, like, psychological safety,
That's it.
knowing they can be vulnerable, ask for help.
Yeah.
But is that even possible?
Right.
Because a lot of workplaces still have that whole, like, suck it up and get it done mentality.
It's true. And that's a huge cultural shift.
Yeah.
It's going to take a real commitment from like the top, from leadership, but creating a space where people feel comfortable to actually communicate openly.
Yeah.
That's crucial. Without that, managers are just going to keep dealing with their struggles alone.
Right.
And that just makes the whole burnout thing way worse.
It's like expecting them to build a skyscraper with, like, no plans and no construction crew.
Right.
Handing them a pile of bricks and saying, good luck.
Exactly. And, you know, while we're on the subject of support systems, we got to talk about mentorship and coaching, you know. Having someone more experienced, a mentor,
Yeah.
to guide them or a coach to help them, you know, work through some stuff, that can be huge.
So it's not just about giving them the tools. It's about that human connection, right?
So
Someone to talk to who, like, really gets what they're going through.
exactly. Exactly. And it can't just be a one-time thing, you know.
Right.
This has got to be ongoing, like baked into the company culture. Regular check-ins, chances to give feedback, and actually being willing to like adjust workloads when things get too crazy.
You mentioned workload, and that makes me think about work-life balance.
Why?
You know, it seems like every generation kind of complains about this, but is it, like, extra bad for middle managers right now?
I think it's definitely a big factor.
Okay.
You know, they're constantly stuck in the middle,
Right.
trying to keep their bosses happy, trying to keep their teams happy.
Yeah.
And that can bleed into their personal lives, you know.
So what can companies do about this?
Right.
Are we talking, like, ping pong tables and free snacks?
Ah, the perks.
Yeah.
Those are fun.
Yeah.
But they're not really the solution.
Ah.
We're talking about like real structural changes. Things like, you know, flexible work arrangements,
Okay.
actually encouraging people to take vacations, setting, you know, realistic expectations about workloads
Right.
and availability, all that kind of stuff.
So it sounds like you're talking about, like, a shift in mindset,
Yeah.
not just, like, ticking boxes on a benefits checklist.
Right.
But let's be real. Can companies really afford to prioritize work-life balance?
Right.
Especially when everything's so
I
competitive.
think they can't afford not to, actually.
Hmm.
Think about how much burnout costs
Yeah.
companies.
Right.
Lost productivity, people quitting all the time, everybody's morale is in the toilet.
Yeah. It all adds up.
It really does. Putting money into like manager well-being,
Okay.
that's an investment in the whole company.
Right. Because it's not just about preventing the bad stuff. It's also about, like, unlocking the good stuff.
Exactly.
If managers feel supported
Yeah.
and they have some balance, they can actually, like, bring their best selves to work.
All of it.
That's everybody.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And you know what? When managers do well, their teams do well,
Yeah.
which ultimately, you know, means the business does well too.
Right. It's like a win-win-win.
It is. It is.
Okay. So we've talked about training.
Yeah.
We've talked about culture, work-life balance.
Right.
Anything else organizations can do to build that scaffolding for their middle managers?
One more thing, and it often gets overlooked, but it's recognition and appreciation. You know,
Okay.
middle managers, they're kind of like the unsung heroes.
Right?
They're always there working their butts off behind the scenes.
Hmm.
They need to know that people actually like, value what they do.
It's that basic human need, right?
It is.
Feeling seen, feeling appreciated. Totally.
But how do you do that in a way that feels like real
Right.
and not just like some empty words?
It's got to be genuine, you know?
Yeah.
It starts with just like saying thank you,
Okay.
actually acknowledging what they're doing
Mm-hmm.
and doing it in a specific way
Yeah.
that means something, you
Yeah,
know?
right.
It could be like a handwritten note
Okay.
mentioning them in a meeting, maybe even a small gift.
Wait, it doesn't have to be like this huge thing.
No, not at all.
Just something real, consistent,
Yeah.
sincere.
Exactly. And, you know, it can't just be from like the top down either.
Okay.
It's got to be peer to peer too.
Right. Colleagues recognizing each other.
Exactly. That can be super powerful. And then we can't forget about technology, you know?
Okay.
There's some amazing tools out there
Mm.
that can really help managers be more effective, more organized, and stay more connected with their teams.
So like project management software.
Yes, communication platforms, maybe even those digital coaching things we were talking about before.
Exactly.
Yeah.
All that stuff can really like streamline their workflow,
Right.
cut down on those administrative tasks that just like eat up their time.
Right. Free up their time for the important stuff.
Yeah, exactly. Give them more time to actually, lead and support their people.
Okay, so it seems like addressing this whole manager crash thing, it's not just one solution.
No.
It's a whole bunch of things.
Yeah.
Training, culture, support, even technology.
It all works together.
But what about the managers themselves?
Right.
Like, what can they do while they're waiting for their companies to catch up with all this?
That's a great question. Even if things aren't ideal where they work, there's stuff managers can do to protect themselves. Build some resilience,
Okay.
And that's where this whole conversation gets kind of personal.
Okay, well, let's get personal then. So
Yeah.
we've talked a lot about like what companies should be doing, but let's focus on like the individual managers out there.
Yeah.
The ones like right now dealing with all this stuff.
Right now.
What advice would you give them?
It sounds kind of cliche, but I think self-care is super important.
Yeah.
It really is.
I know.
Yeah.
It's one of those things that's easier said than done, right?
Yeah.
When you're like swamped with deadlines,
Yeah.
feeling the pressure from every direction.
Hard.
Yeah.
It is.
Are you saying that like even small things can actually make a difference?
Oh, for sure. Even like 15 minutes just to like breathe,
Yeah.
Or take a walk.
Yeah.
Anything to get out of your head for a bit.
Get away from the screen.
Right, exactly.
Uh,
And sleep. Don't underestimate sleep.
Sleep is huge.
It is. A well-rested manager, that's a good manager.
Yeah, that's a manager who can like actually function.
Exactly.
Okay, so prioritize self-care.
Yes.
Check. What else can managers do to like deal with all this, to like not crash?
Learning to set boundaries, that's another big one. It's really about knowing like what your limits are.
Yeah.
And saying no to things that are just going to like overload you or take over your personal time.
But isn't that like kind of risky?
Right.
I mean, in a lot of workplaces, overwork is like rewarded.
Yeah.
Being always on is like the expectation.
Right.
I can see how managers would feel like they'd be penalized for like actually setting boundaries.
It's true. And it goes back to that whole culture thing we were talking about.
Yeah.
If everybody's expected to be available 24/7,
Yeah. It's hard to break out of that.
it is.
But setting boundaries, that's not about like being lazy, right?
No, not at all.
It's about like protecting your energy.
Yeah,
So you can actually keep doing your job well.
exactly. It's about sustainability,
Sustainable performance, not just like burning out.
Exactly.
Okay, so self-care, boundaries.
Right.
Any other like survival tips for managers out there?
Don't be afraid to ask for help.
Yeah.
Lean on your network,
Yeah.
colleagues, mentors.
Mhm.
Maybe even think about like professional coaching
Mm.
or therapy.
Right.
It can be really helpful to just like talk things through.
Yeah, just to get that like outside perspective.
Exactly.
It's kind of like we were saying before, right?
Yeah.
Companies need to provide support,
Yeah.
but managers have to be willing to like actually accept it too.
Totally.
But sometimes even with like all the self-care and all the support in the world,
Right.
the pressure can still just feel like overwhelming.
Yeah.
What would you say to managers who feel like totally stuck on the verge of burnout?
Sometimes you got to take a step back, and that can be hard.
Yeah.
But really look at your situation.
Correct.
Are you in the right role?
Mm.
Is this even the right company?
Right.
Sometimes you just got to admit that things aren't working.
Yeah.
and start looking at other options.
So leaving a management job or
Mhm.
even leaving a company, that doesn't have to be like a failure.
No, not at all.
Okay.
It can actually be a sign that you're like self-aware
Hmm.
and that you're committed to, taking care of yourself.
Taking care of yourself, yeah.
Yeah. Sometimes the best way to get through a crash
Mm.
is to just get out of the way.
Right, steer clear of the wreckage.
Exactly.
I think we've given everyone a lot to think about today.
Yeah, I think so.
We've really explored this whole idea of a manager crash,
Yeah,
looked at the data, the causes, the potential
that's
consequences,
for sure.
and most importantly, what people can actually do about it.
Absolutely.
But before we go, I want to leave our listeners with one last thought.
Cook.
I think what we've been talking about today, it really shows this fundamental shift that's happening in the workplace.
Yeah.
It's not just about climbing the ladder anymore,
Oh,
getting to that corner office.
right.
It's about finding meaning and purpose in our work,
Yeah,
but also taking care of ourselves.
exactly. And that's not just for managers.
No, it's for everybody.
It's for everyone.
It's about redefining what success actually means, right?
I think so.
And realizing that a fulfilling career doesn't have to destroy our health and happiness.
Right. It shouldn't.
And as we head into 2025, I think that's the conversation we need to be having
Yeah.
as individuals, as teams, as a society. What kind of work culture do we actually want?
It's a big question.
Yeah.
Do we just want to keep pushing for efficiency above everything else?
Yeah.
Or do we want to prioritize, people's well-being?
Right.
The choices we make now, they're going to shape the future of work for a long time.
So to everyone listening, pay attention to what's going on around you.
Yeah.
Ask the tough questions.
Mm.
And most importantly, stick up for yourselves
Yeah.
and your colleagues.
Right.
The future of work, it's really in our hands.
It is. It's up to us.